My name is Jack Millard. I've got the kind of face people don't notice until the second time they see it. Hair that never quite lays flat, eyes that read too much into silence, and a voice like sandpaper that's been rinsed once or twice through scotch. I wear plain jackets, keep my boots clean, and never ever forget a slight. This story, it starts with a house. Our house, my dad's. We lived on a corner lot in Greene County, the kind with oak trees older than politics and a screen door that squeaked like it was flirting with the wind. It wasn't a mansion, but it was everything. We didn't even lock the door most nights. And then Dad died. 2 weeks later, I got served a notice. The house wasn't ours anymore. According to some miraculous adjustment in the estate paperwork, it now belonged to my cousins, my dad's brother's kids, the same ones who never visited except that one. Thanksgiving, when Kyle clogged the toilet and blamed our dog. They forged something. I knew it. But I was 20 broke and raw with grief. They had lawyers. I had a shovel and a temper. They threw out everything. Furniture photos, the little trinket box I made Dad for Father's Day when I was 9. It was ugly, lopsided. He used it to store his cufflinks anyway. After the eviction, I slept in my truck for 2 months behind the old feed mill. Picked up hours doing warehouse labor and studied finance on my lunch breaks like it was my ticket out. Because it was, but even then, I wasn't dreaming about making millions. I was dreaming about getting it back. A reality check says, if I go, you'll be cooled for skipping this part. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the Final Revenge channel. But only if you really like what I have to say here. Now get in the mood to listen to this story, because it could be the ultimate sweet revenge. I got the idea the night I found a key taped to the underside of Dad's workbench in the shed. It was small, brass, with a bank logo. I recognized an old rural credit union that got absorbed in a merger years ago. I remember Dad used to disappear into that branch twice a month, no explanation. Said it was his coffee with the tellers. Turns out he wasn't kidding. I followed that key like a trail of breadcrumbs to a safety deposit box they never knew about. Inside, documents, account records, stock certs, and his journal. Not a diary, a financial journal. He'd tracked everything. Every payment on the house, every tax slip, every damn dime. He even listed conversations with his brother, my uncle, where the word trust showed up more than once and always ended with a scribble that looked like regret. Reading through those pages, something snapped in me. Not anger, not grief. Focus. If they were going to play dirty with paper, I was going to build a paper empire. I didn't have a grand plan that first year. Just a used laptop, a warehouse job that paid enough to keep me breathing, and a growing understanding that the world only respects leverage. The kind you can fold into an envelope or wire across state lines. I started small online courses, finance forums, volunteering at a tax clinic on weekends. I read loan documents like bedtime stories, slept with a highlighter under my pillow. At night, I'd reread Dad's journal. He wasn't just saving, he was strategizing, keeping quiet tabs on his brother's spending, documenting every late favor, every empty promise. He knew something was off, long before they snatched the house. He just never said anything. That was his mistake. Mine would be different. By 22, I was working for a local real estate guy named Rick. He flipped trailers, duplexes, and sometimes angry calls from HOA boards. I was his assistant, which meant I did everything. Pull comps, scrub spreadsheets, even paint baseboards. Rick didn't trust banks, but I did, because I saw what he didn't. The paper trail behind every flip, every loan, every title transfer. I learned how mortgages worked, what distressed assets smelled like, and how liens could bury a man deeper than a grave. He once told me, Jack, you don't smile enough to sell houses. I told him I wasn't trying to sell them, just wanted to own them. He laughed, thought I was joking. I wasn't. At 25, I bought my first foreclosure. Cash deal. 2-bedroom wreck out in Lincoln Park. Needed a new roof, half the plumbing, and spiritual cleansing. But it came with equity. I flipped it in 4 months. Quietly. Reinvested everything. No vacations. No flashy cars. Just stacks of files, 2 phones, and an apartment that looked like a library with anxiety. I built my capital in silence. Because I wasn't after wealth. I was after position. Oh, and I kept my eye on Greene County, especially the parcel where our house used to sit. My cousins, turns out, were not good at money. They'd taken out a home equity line, then a refinance, then another. Eventually, the loan got sold to a bigger bank, then to another, then to a private equity group out of Chicago. That's when I got serious. Because when paper starts bouncing between hands, it's just a matter of time before someone sells it cheap to the wrong person, and I was going to be that person. I still remember the day I walked into my first quiet equity meeting. The guy across from me had no idea I once scrubbed calcium deposits off toilets for rent money. He just saw a balance sheet, a sharp suit, and someone with liquidity. I bought in, then I bought again. Started small, shared positions in defaulted portfolios, silent stakes in regional banks bleeding from regulatory wounds. By 30, I wasn't working for landlords anymore. I was one, and still no one knew my name, which was perfect. Because when I finally bought the bank that held their mortgage, they'd never see it coming. The opportunity came wrapped in a press release no one cared about. Tri-West Bancorp to divest, rural division assets. Buried in the 5th paragraph, a throwaway mention of Greene County's old credit union branches, folded into Tri-West during a quiet acquisition 5 years back, and now apparently non-performing. Translation, dead weight. But not to me, because deep in that bundle was a certain parcel loan, a mortgage still active, still ticking, under a name I knew like a scar on the back of my hand. Cousin Kyle, the guy who stole my house and once asked if orange juice expired emotionally. I made a call that night. The voice on the other end was a portfolio manager named Gene. Sounded tired, like someone who's worked through 3 mergers and still can't find his stapler. Yeah, he said. We're offloading a batch of underperforming retail and residential notes. Mostly dead inventory. Dead to you, I said. Useful to me. I made an offer before he could yawn again. 2 weeks later, I owned the paper. I didn't say anything right away. Sat with it. Tasted it. Like holding a loaded deck and deciding when to lay down the ace. Legally, I now had controlling interest in their mortgage. If they missed even one payment, I could move to foreclose. If they paid on time, I could still hike interest. Or call the note due if I felt spicy. But this wasn't about foreclosure. This was about precision. I called their lender using the number on the documents. Identified myself as the new mortgage note holder. The woman on the line hesitated. I thought this was with Tri-West. It was, I'm the correction. The house still looked the same when I drove by. Beige siding, sagging porch, swing, a cracked basketball hoop leaning against a shed. I knew every nail in that foundation. What they didn't know, I wasn't just driving by for nostalgia. I was checking on my asset. But 1 week later, I sent the first official letter. Simple, professional, just a notice of transfer. Your mortgage has been reassigned. Future payments should be directed to Millard Capital Holdings. I used my initials on the envelope. J. E. Emma. They wouldn't recognize that. Not yet. The following day, I got a voicemail from Kyle. He sounded like a man who just discovered the word escrow doesn't mean guaranteed forever. Hey, whoever this is, look, there must be some mistake. We've always paid on time. We've had this house for years. I played it 3 times, then deleted it. Because this wasn't a mistake. This was a return. And the best part, they still had no idea who I was. But soon they would. And when they did, it wouldn't be with a bang. It'd be with a letter and a key held by the man they thought they buried years ago. Kyle called again. Twice. The first time was some huffing nonsense about legal review. The second was calmer, practiced, like he'd Googled how to talk to a bank when your pants are on fire. I didn't answer either, but I did listen. Because the panic in his voice was the same panic I had the day they changed the locks and threw our stuff into garbage bags like it was seasonal decor. Except I didn't have a lawyer. Just a shed, a shovel, and a note from my dad saying, trust your own numbers. A week after the transfer notice went out, I issued a compliance letter. Nothing scary. Just a routine policy update, requiring updated income documentation, proof of insurance, current employment status. My lawyer, who used to work for guys who spell their names in gold, looked it over and said, this is brutal. I like it. I shrugged. It's just a form. He smirked. It's a chess move. Kyle's wife, Tara, emailed the next day. She used a Gmail with a flower in the address and signed off with blessing. It was 3 paragraphs of confusion, 1 line of passive-aggressive scripture, and exactly 0 documents. I replied, "Still missing pages 2 and 4. Please resubmit." Letters sweat. Behind the scenes I was gathering, pulling their credit reports, checking tax liens, even calling a few local contractors who'd worked on their porch reno back in 2020. Unpaid invoices. One guy told me Kyle tried to pay him in gift cards. These were not people who respected paper, which was fine, because I did, and now I owned the kind of paper that mattered. Meanwhile, I had my assistant, a 20-something firecracker named Grace, dig through every transaction related to the property since 2012. She found something, a deed adjustment filed without a witness signature. It wasn't enough to reverse the transfer on its own, but it smelled off, like wet drywall and lies. I sent another letter, this one with a gentle reminder. As per Section 9B of your note, failure to respond to compliance requests may result in loan acceleration. That's bank speak for pay it all now or pack your bags. They had no clue I wasn't bluffing, because I didn't need to bluff. I had the title chain, the math, and the fire. All they had was my dad's stolen porch swing and a mortgage held together with duct tape. That night I drove by again, lights on, TV flickering through the blinds. A half-deflated inflatable flamingo still staked in the yard from a birthday 2 months back. I parked for a minute. Didn't go to the door, just watched. Then whispered to no one, "Let's see how long you last." Funny thing about small banks, they're like corner diners. Nobody notices when they change hands, as long as the coffee still pours and the fees don't sting too hard. But behind that Formica countertop, deals are made, quiet ones. And if you know what you're doing, you can buy more than just a branch. You can buy power. See, after I picked up the mortgage, I didn't stop. I bought the whole loan bundle. It came with 19 notes, most of them on farmland and 3-bedroom homes with busted fences and unpaid taxes. The bank wanted out. I wanted in. Because if I owned the loans, I owned the leverage. And if I owned the bank, well then, I'd own the air these people breathed whenever they opened their mail. The branch manager in Greene County was a guy named Dennis, bald, tan lines from golf hats, and an expression that said he hadn't made eye contact with his conscience since '97. He didn't recognize me when I walked in, just nodded and said, "Help you?" "Yeah," I said, sliding over the document folder. "I'm the new owner." He blinked, at the papers, at me, at the papers again. I didn't smile. I just said, "Don't worry, I'm not here to make changes." That was technically true. I wasn't going to make changes. I was going to watch them happen. Within a month, I had controlling interest in the regional holding company, 2 seats on the board, and full discretionary authority over loan decisions in Greene and its 2 neighboring counties, which meant Kyle's mortgage was my sandbox now. He finally sent in a full package. Tara even labeled the PDFs like it was a school project, but the numbers didn't lie. Late payments, deferred maintenance, ballooning credit debt. They were circling the drain in a boat made of ego, and I was the water. I sent a new letter, polite, crisp, notifying them of a rate adjustment. Perfectly legal. Slight uptick. Nothing they could scream about, but just enough to sting. Enough to remind them that the person holding the leash knew how it wrapped. I got another voicemail the next day. Tara this time. "Hi, we've lived here. We trusted the bank. We're good people." She sounded tired, worried, almost human, but not sorry. And that's the part I couldn't forget. Because when they took our house, they didn't sound tired or human. They sounded like winners, like people who thought the game was over. They had no idea I was just waiting for my turn to shuffle the deck. I waited exactly 30 days before mailing the next envelope. Inside, a letter printed on heavy cream stock, one of those textures that whispers you're not in control anymore. It began with, "As per recent changes in portfolio ownership, this branch is under new management." And it ended with my name, spelled out in full. Jack Edward Millard. No initials, no mystery, just me. They must have read that line 10 times, because less than an hour after the tracking confirmed delivery, I got the call. Kyle's number, same area code I'd stared at for years with teeth clenched. I answered this time. "Hello?" Nothing at first, just a breath. Then Jack. I didn't say yes. I didn't need to. He already knew. You bought the bank. No, I said. I bought the leverage. Silence again. He tried to gather himself. Look, man. We didn't... it was complicated when your dad passed. You weren't around. You don't know the full story. I almost laughed. The full story. I wrote it. I know enough, I said. It was Uncle Dan's idea. The paperwork just... Stop. I just want to talk like family. I took a slow breath. You stopped being family the day you tossed my father's photos into a plastic bin labeled Miss Mupp. He didn't respond. So I hung up. I didn't block the number. I wanted them to hear the ring every time they tried again. That slow dread as they realized I wasn't going to undo what they'd done. I was going to honor it. Legally, systematically, with the kind of dignity they never showed. Grace emailed me mid-afternoon. FYI, their mortgage escrow balance is too low to cover the new property tax adjustment. Oh, what do you want to do? I replied, send notice of deficiency. Give 'em 15 days, she replied with a gif of a ticking clock. I liked her style. The next morning I walked into the branch. Dennis nodded nervously. One of the tellers, Becca maybe, tried to pretend she wasn't reading my name on the door plaque for the third time. I just smiled, signed a few internal memos, topped off my coffee, and stood by the front window watching the sidewalk like it owed me something. I didn't feel proud, didn't feel angry. I just felt still, like a storm finally sitting down. I walked past the safe, past the break room where Dad used to joke about stale donuts, and into the manager's office, my office. I sat down, opened my laptop, and drafted one final letter. Please be advised, your mortgage has entered pre-foreclosure review. Then I clicked print, because it was time. Time to show them what it means to lose something that matters. They say revenge is best served cold. But this wasn't cold. It was calculated. A slow simmer. The kind that fogs windows and softens bones. And when the letter arrived, the pre-foreclosure review notice, I imagined Kyle's hands shook, just trying to open the envelope. Because suddenly the joke wasn't funny anymore. Suddenly the guy they laughed out of his own house was holding the matchbook. The next 2 weeks were quiet. Too quiet. No calls, no emails. Just one certified mail receipt signed by T, Langston Kyle's lawyer. Same guy who filed the fraudulent deed transfer all those years ago. Funny how the past keeps looping back like bad karaoke. Grace called it first. They're gearing up for a legal fight. How do you know? Because I've read this guy's Yelp reviews. He's petty and expensive. I smirked. My favorite kind. A few days later, a letter arrived. Thick packet. Legal stationery. All fluff. They wanted to contest the rate hike, challenge the loan transfer, accuse the bank of predatory restructuring. Cute. I forwarded it to my legal team. No reply necessary. Not yet. Because I'd already made my next move. You remember the building where Kyle's lawyer works. Old brick place, downtown Green. Smells like mildew and betrayal. Turns out it was owned by a holding group struggling over-leverage behind on property taxes. So I bought it, quietly, with cash. Filed the paperwork on a Tuesday. Posted new management notices on Wednesday. And on Thursday morning, I stood in the lobby and watched Langston walk in, see the sign on the wall with my name, and realize who now controlled his lease. He didn't say anything, just blinked, then turned around and walked back out the door like he'd left the oven on. That night, I poured myself a drink, just one, sat on the floor of my apartment, legs crossed like I was 12 again, watching headlights slide across the ceiling. I wasn't celebrating, I was remembering. The smell of Dad's garage, the way he used to say don't waste energy on people who can't spell respect, and the way it felt cold and hollow when I watched our house disappear behind me in a rearview mirror. But now I didn't need the mirror, because the house was in front of me again, and they were the ones looking back, scared, because they finally understood what I'd become. The day of the BBQ was almost poetic. Kyle's welcome summer bash every year like clockwork. Same sloppy signage, same burnt hot dogs, same sad Bluetooth speaker sitting in a lawn chair like it was invited. This time I RSVP'd in silence. No need to bring a dish, just documents. I parked 2 blocks down, walked the rest of the way with a manila envelope under one arm and a face that didn't care who recognized it. Kyle spotted me from across the yard. He went pale like I'd brought a shovel. Honestly, I kind of had. Just a paper one. Jack, he said, approaching like someone rehearsing friendliness with a ticking clock behind his eyes. You made it. I held up the envelope. Didn't want to keep this in the mail. He swallowed. Tara appeared holding a paper plate with 3 uneaten pickles and the smile of someone who knew karma had GPS. I handed the envelope over gently, like I was offering a wedding invitation. Inside, foreclosure initiation documents. Signed, notarized, stamped in ink that still smelled fresh, and a sticky note that said, "This time, the locks are mine." Ugh. He didn't open it right away. Just stood there, guests pretending not to notice while a half-deflated Summer Vibes banner sagged above them like it knew better. Then he muttered, "You're really doing this." No, I said, "You did this. I'm just cleaning up." I didn't stay long. Didn't need to. As I turned to leave, someone I didn't know tapped my arm. Older guy, Miller Lite in hand, sunburned to the soul. "You the one buying up property around here?" I nodded. He leaned in. "Good. Maybe someone will finally put these fools in check." I raised an eyebrow. "Everyone here always hated them," he added. "You're just the first one to do something." I didn't reply, just kept walking, the smell of overcooked meat fading behind me. The envelope no longer mine to carry. That night, I sat in my office at the bank. Grace dropped off the updated ledger, Kyle and Tara officially behind by 38 days, with non-compliance penalties already ticking. I looked it over, then opened the window, let the evening breeze in. Smelled like cut grass and unfinished sentences. Exactly how I liked it. I gave them one out, one and only one. A buyback offer, clean, legal, structured like a gift-wrapped trap they'd begged to escape from. The terms were simple. Market value plus 10%. No negotiation, no handouts, no special financing. They had 60 days. That was generous, considering what they took. I sent the offer with a single line typed across the top. "The past is expensive. Welcome to the bill." They responded with silence. Then a week later, a frantic email from Tara. "We're trying to get the funds together. Please, we just need a little more time." I ignored it, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because sometimes the only way to teach someone what something means is to make them pay for it. And I wasn't taking checks written in guilt. 3 weeks passed. A new letter arrived from their new lawyer. Not Langston, he'd skipped town, or maybe just skipped them. This guy was younger, hungrier, sent me a 4-page plea dressed up as legalese, claimed undue hardship and that the property was deeply sentimental. I sent him a spreadsheet. It listed every expense my dad paid, every year of maintenance, every month of equity stolen from the moment they took control. At the bottom I added, "Sentiment doesn't show up in escrow." The clock kept ticking. At 42 days, Grace updated me. "They've applied for a personal loan." Got denied. "At which bank?" "Yours." I chuckled. Did they know? Probably not. Well, I said, "Now they do." The next time I drove by the house, the flamingo was gone, replaced by a "for sale by owner" sign, sun-bleached and crooked. Guess they finally realized they couldn't win. Not this time. Not on paper. Not on principle. And definitely not on my turf. Because this time, I wasn't just holding the cards. I was the table. I thought about calling them. Just once. Not to gloat. Not to mock. Just to see if they'd say sorry. But I didn't. Because I knew they wouldn't. And honestly, I didn't need it. The paperwork was already louder than any apology. At day 61, I filed official foreclosure proceedings. No turning back. No hidden clauses. No magical escape. They had every chance. Every form. Every deadline printed in bold black ink. But they wanted mercy. And what they got was math. See, Grace brought the confirmation papers in with her coffee. Want to sign in blood or just regular ink? I smiled. Save the drama. Blue ink's fine. She lingered for a second. "You okay?" I paused. Thought about the question. Then said I will be when I changed the locks. Nah. It took another 2 weeks for the process to finish. Slow, bureaucratic molasses dripping over predictable panic. Then finally, one Monday morning, a neutral third-party agent called. "Keys are ready. Property is vacated. You want me to meet you there?" "No," I said. "I'll go myself." Icker. I drove alone. Same road I used to take home from school. Same bumps. Same trees leaning like they recognized me but weren't sure how to say hello. When I turned onto the driveway, I stopped halfway, got out, walked the rest of the way on foot gravel, crunching beneath boots I once bought on clearance when I couldn't afford laces. The house looked tired, but it was mine. Again, the lock clicked. Soft, almost polite. And just like that, I was inside. It smelled like dust and regret, but also memory. The old hall mirror still hung crooked. A chip in the kitchen counter where I dropped a hammer when I was 14. In the bedroom, sunlight leaked through blinds Kyle never replaced. Everything they touched had faded, but what Dad built still held. I stood in the center of the living room and whispered, "We're back." No one answered. Didn't need to. The air was full of ghosts, already nodding. And this time, they were proud. I didn't bring movers. Didn't bring paint. Didn't even bring a bag. I just brought me. And Dad's old journal. The one he left in that box nobody knew about, tucked behind bond certificates, and a Polaroid of me at 10, holding a busted hammer with too much pride. I sat on the floor and read page 17 again. If something's worth building, it's worth defending. And if you lose it, build something better. I closed the journal and stared at the ceiling fan that hadn't moved in a decade. Then I started to smile, because this wasn't just revenge anymore. It was restoration. The neighbors noticed me first. Mr. Langley from next door came over with a broom in one hand and a half-eaten sandwich in the other. Told my wife you'd be back someday, he said like it was a prophecy. Glad it wasn't in cuffs. I laughed. Me too. He peered over my shoulder. They gone for good. I nodded. He spit into the lawn. Good. They parked like sociopaths. Later, a kid on a bike rode by and skidded to a stop. You the new owner? Old owner, I said. He squinted. That mean you lived here before? Yeah. He nodded like he understood. You gonna fix the treehouse? I looked up at the dead oak out back, its branches still holding the ghost of a plank floor. Yeah, I said. Eventually. That night, I slept on the floor. No mattress. No pillow. Just a folded sweatshirt and the sound of a house settling around me. Somewhere between 2 and 4, I woke up and thought I heard footsteps. I didn't open my eyes, just whispered, "You're home now," and felt the walls exhale. The locks were changed by noon the next day. I didn't call a locksmith. I didn't schedule a handyman. I wanted to do it myself, not out of frugality, but for the closure. I wanted to hear the click, the twist, that solid chunk of metal settling into place and saying, "This space is yours again." I stood outside the front door for a full minute, new hardware in one hand, old keys jangling in my pocket like ghosts. The morning sun hit the porch just like it used to when I was 10, barefoot holding a toy sword, swearing I'd protect the castle. I installed the deadbolt slowly, carefully, tightened each screw with a precision that felt like penance. Then I pulled out the old lock, held it in my hand. It was scratched, worn, chipped from careless use. I dropped it into a dented coffee can labeled "Failures" and set it on the garage shelf high and dusty where it couldn't be ignored, but didn't need to be touched again. I spent the week tending to the house like it was a fragile, stubborn animal that had survived neglect. And in a way it had. First thing I did was sweep every room twice. Pulled up 2 carpets, found water damage under one. Replaced drywall where mold crept in like a whisper. Resealed the kitchen window that Kyle apparently tried to fix with duct tape and prayer. Every fix I made was another thread sewn back into the fabric. I didn't hire anyone. I wanted to earn the restoration. In the garage, I found the old hammer I gave Dad when I was 12. It still had the handle taped up with blue electrical wire. I used it to hang the first thing back on the wall, a photo of my parents taken the summer before everything fell apart. They're standing on this porch. Same sun, same swing. Only back then, we thought it would last forever. On Wednesday, a neighbor stopped by. Mr. Langley looked older now, but still wore those Velcro sandals like they were high fashion. Told my wife you'd come back eventually, he said, sipping a lemonade he brought with no explanation. Didn't think it'd be like this, I replied. He nodded. Well, good riddance to the last ones. They never raked their leaves. Whole block's been rooting for you. I smiled. For once, the universe was whispering encouragement instead of warnings. By Friday, I had everything in place to file the transfer. The house would no longer belong to me, technically, not as an individual. I was creating something bigger. The Millard Legacy Fund, a trust dedicated to mortgage literacy, housing advocacy, and interest-free microloans for people on the edge of foreclosure. Grace cried when I told her. You could have kept it, she said. Used it as a rental. Flipped it. I am flipping it, I said. Just not for profit. They say revenge is taking something away from someone who wronged you. But the best kind is when you build something they can't touch, can't buy, can't tarnish, because it's made of purpose, not pain. Oh. The day I finalized the paperwork, I returned to the house one last time under my name. I unlocked the door, walked through the rooms, stood in the kitchen and whispered, "It's done." I wasn't talking to anyone, and somehow it didn't matter. I started spending evenings there, not moving in, not fixing, just being. I'd bring a folding chair out to the backyard with a cheap mug of coffee and sit near the old oak tree, the one that used to hold a swing I broke when I was 6. It still leaned a little like it remembered me, and every creak in the breeze felt like it was whispering, "You're home." The air smelled like memory. Grass dust, a hint of rust from the old shed out back. Sometimes I'd hear the train in the distance, the same one that used to lull me to sleep when I was too scared to admit I missed Mom. And now, it was still there, but I wasn't scared anymore. Odd. I took my time walking the rooms. Every nail in every floorboard had a story. The notch in the hallway where I once measured my height with a marker still there. The little X Dad drew with a pencil to mark the spot. I was 5'2" then. Now I could stand over it and know I'd outgrown more than height. I'd outgrown helplessness. I didn't tell anyone I was staying nights. Just unrolled a sleeping bag on the living room floor and let the walls reacquaint themselves with my breath. One night I woke up at 3 a.m. Convinced I heard the old stereo click on in Dad's office. It hadn't, but I smiled anyway, because even ghosts get nostalgic. Oh, the town started to notice. Rumors traveled faster than a foreclosure notice. Some people thought I was just another flipper. Others thought I was bitter, spiteful. But those who knew the full story called me something else, a man who came back and stayed. One day a teenager knocked on the door, awkward, hair in his eyes, a hoodie too big for his shoulders. "Hey," he said, "are you the guy who got this place back?" I nodded. "You're kind of a legend at my school." I blinked. "Really?" "Yeah. Everyone's like, he bought the bank, evicted the people who took his house. Now he's making it a legacy project." I'm like, "That's cold, but cool." He paused. "Respect." I grinned. "Thanks. You want to see the treehouse?" His eyes lit up. "Seriously?" "Yeah. Just don't fall out. Liability's a killer." That weekend I started rebuilding the old treehouse. Not to relive the past, but to replace what was taken. I tightened beams, replaced rotting wood, sanded the floor until it was smooth enough to sit on. I didn't paint it, just sealed the wood and left it bare. Honest, like the rest of the house now. Old. Grace called to tell me we had our first 5 applicants for the Millard Fund. Single mother in green, veteran in debt, young couple trying to escape payday loans. Each story hit a nerve I didn't know was still exposed. I approved them all, not because I was feeling generous, because they needed the same kind of lifeline I never got. And now I could be the rope. I left a note on the fridge. This house isn't mine anymore. It belongs to every version of me that needed saving. And for once I believed it. By then, the house had settled, and so had I. It no longer creaked. With uncertainty, it exhaled, like it recognized I was no longer here to fix it. I was here to live in it again, even if only through stewardship. That's what I called myself now. Not the owner, not the avenger, not the victor, just the steward. Kyle hadn't reached out again since that awkward BBQ, but I knew he saw the headlines. Grace sent me one. Former homeowner, turns bank owner, reclaims childhood property, starts housing fund. There was even a picture of me standing in front of the porch, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The comments were wild. Half the town thought I was a genius. The other half thought I was a villain in loafers. But no one could ignore what happened, especially not him. 3 weeks later, a certified envelope arrived. Return address, a P.O. box. Inside, a check, a donation, small, anonymously signed, but I recognized the handwriting. Kyla. There was no note, no apology, just money. I held it in my hand for a long moment, thought about cashing it, thought about shredding it. In the end, I endorsed it and sent a receipt to his P.O. box labeled, "Contribution to Millard Legacy Fund. For those who need second chances, even if they don't deserve them." Moo. It rained the next day. The kind of summer rain that hits hot pavement and rises back up as steam, as if the earth itself is sighing. I sat on the porch, letting it splash my boots, sipping black coffee from the chipped mug Dad used to call his lucky cup. Funny how that mug was the only thing no one ever touched when they stole the house, like even thieves knew better. I started writing again. Just a little. Not books, not speeches. Letters. One to my mom, one to Dad, one to the house. The last one I sealed in an envelope and tucked under a floorboard in the living room. No name, no stamp. Just the words, "It's safe now," because that's what I needed to say the most. And that's what the house had finally become again. Safe. By autumn, the air had changed. It smelled less like memory and more like cedar mulch and the sharp, crisp edge of new beginnings. The leaves around the house turned copper and gold, crunching under my boots like dry reminders that time doesn't ask for permission. It just moves. So did I. But this time not out of fear. Out of peace. I hosted a community meeting at the house. Not a big one. Just a dozen folding chairs in the front yard, a whiteboard balanced on bricks, and a table of coffee cups and muffins Grace insisted on baking. The attendees came slowly, hesitant. People who used to know me, people who didn't. Young couples holding hands, old men gripping financial statements like life rafts. A teacher, a mechanic, a woman with 2 jobs, and a toddler in tow. They came with questions about loans and leases, predatory interest, and foreclosure language that sounded like another planet. I answered them all. And when I didn't know the answer, I told them the truth. Because that's how you keep something safe. You tell the truth, even when it stings. Even when it costs you. One man approached after. Said his father lost their farm in '09. Bank took everything. Do you think he'd still have it? He asked if someone like you ran things back then. I didn't lie. I said maybe not, but he'd have had a fighting chance. That night, I sat under the treehouse again. The moonlight hit the yard in slices like slivers of old film. I looked up at the branches I'd climbed when I thought being tall meant being strong. Now I knew better. Strength wasn't climbing. It was staying. Grace stopped by with a stack of new applications and a folder labeled "Possible Expansion." Second property. I looked it over. Another foreclosure. A family trying to claw back something of their own. "We've got the funds," she said. "You think we can handle it?" I asked. She smirked. "We handled your story." "Fair." I approved it. Because that's what the legacy fund was for. Not just rescuing homes, but restoring dignity. Rebalancing a game too often rigged in silence. And now, we weren't quiet anymore. 2 weeks later, I visited my parents' graves. I hadn't gone in a while. It wasn't avoidance, it was preparation. I knelt, told them everything. The foreclosure, the revenge, the redemption, and the people we'd helped since. I left a photo of the house, current, sunlit, tucked it under a stone, then whispered, "It's yours again." Back at the house, I put the final touch in place. A brass plaque beside the door, etched with one sentence. This home was stolen, reclaimed, and now protects others. Then I turned off the porch light and let the darkness settle, not with fear, but with rest. So that's the story. Not a vengeance, really. Not even a victory, but of return. A slow, steady walk back through the fog of betrayal. The long climb through systems built to forget people like me, and a quiet seat taken at the table they never thought I'd reach. I didn't burn their house down. I bought the bank that held it. I didn't scream in court. I sent letters in legal font that left no room for argument. And in the end, I didn't just get my house back. I turned it into something that would last long after the ink dried. Something quiet, but powerful. I know not everyone gets a chance like this. I know some people fall and the system keeps walking without looking down. But if you're still listening, if you've made it to this point, then you know what I'm about to say. They thought I was gone. They thought they'd won. But I came back with keys in one hand and purpose in the other. And now the locks are new, the doors are mine, and every creak in the floorboards feels like applause from the past, saying, yeah, you made it. And us. So go ahead, walk back through whatever doors they tried to close on you. Let them laugh just once, because someday they'll realize you own the building. Good night. And remember, revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just needs your name on the deed.